Hi, I'm Abby. This is Abby Matt Rees, and this is my kind of late March wrap up. In March, I read just 4 books, and I have been kind of reading a bit slower than usual, but there is one book I read in March that took me ages to get through, and I'll come to that in a minute. But today, this pretty library is the National Library of Russia in St. Petersburg. It is the oldest public library in Russia and also their first national library. And it was established in 795 by Catherine the Great herself. I love the bookcases behind, the wood they're made out of. It just looks so classic and awesome. This library even remained open during the siege of Leningrad in 1948. Now let's get on to the books. The first book I finished in March is obviously one I can't find. At least once a month I lose a book. My house is not that big. I don't know how this happens, but hopefully if I can remember, I'll put a little picture in the corner for you. But it is The Wrath and the Dawn by Renee Adia. I hope I pronounced that right. I want to be very careful with names. And my buddy read this with Alex Black, and it's great. It's a retelling of Arabian Nights, where Arabian Nights is where the kind of king invited women to sleep with him one night, and then he would kill them the next day. And then one woman came along and started telling him stories at night time, and he would keep her there so he could hear a different story every night, like 1,000 Nights, Arabian Nights. This is a kind of retelling where the premise is kind of the same, where there's Caliph, who is the king of the country, which I can't remember the name of right now, and he does this for at first inexplicable reasons. He takes a new queen and sleeps with her and then kills her in the morning. And Shazi comes along, a young woman whose best friend was killed by this caliph. And she starts telling him stories, and he keeps her alive to hear more stories. And kind of inexplicably, she starts falling for him, even though she has a not boyfriend but kind of love interest on the outside in the real world called Tarek. And he is, while she's in the palace busy falling in love with this king, he kind of organizes some troops to storm the city, and it all gets very complicated. I feel I kind of struggle to put how I feel about this book into words. I enjoyed it very much. The retelling part is good. I don't think I've read many retellings. I'm trying to think if I ever have. I must have, but I can't remember that now. But it is a very interesting story. It's set, in the past, and the descriptions of the food and the fashion and the culture, because it's based in the Middle East, is very rich, and it's a very rich story actually. Even though I enjoyed it, there are examples of kind of odd behaviour that happens that is never explained or will be explained later, that can confuse you and irritate you, and sometimes you want to kind of scream at the characters for being so stupid, but it does all come together. It does. So the beginning is a bit sketchy, but once you get into it, it runs good, and it's very vividly told. It's very imaginative, very visual, and it also makes you question as you go into this thing, why is this king doing this in the first place? Why is he killing so many women? It brings a question of morals into the story, makes you think about it, and I like books that make you think. None of it is forgettable, and you won't be bored during it, but there are times where it raises more questions than it answers, which again can be frustrating. And I know it doesn't sound like I didn't enjoy this book, but I did. It was a lot of fun. I really got invested in the story. I'm currently buddy reading the sequel, The Rose and Dagger, with Alex as I speak. I'll put Alex's channel down below as well before I forget. And I'm enjoying that too. So I actually gave this book 4 out of 5 stars. The second book I finished in March was a buddy read with Olivia from Olivia's Catastrophes, which was such a pleasure to do. She's such an amazing person to buddy read with. And this is A Darker Shade of Magic by V.E. Schwab. This is a very hyped book on BookTube, so I'm guessing a lot of you already know what it's mainly about. But if you don't, it's centers on a main character called Kel, who is an Antari, I think that's how you say it, which is a kind of blood magician, and he can travel through all these different Londons that are in the same place. They're kind of like different dimensions that you access, you know, walls into, doors into even, with magic. And each different London has its own kind of relationship with magic and their own kind of royalty and social systems, which is very interesting. And along the way, he meets Lila, who's a kind of badass girl who's kind of living on the wrong side of the law, but has like a heart of gold and helps him when he gets into trouble. I haven't read much fantasy before this, and especially not books that are so hyped on BookTube. I was absolutely stunned by how much I loved this book. I really, really loved this book. I love the characters of Kel and Lila. I thought they complemented each other like brilliantly. They are both kind of strong characters, noble, quick on their feet, intelligent. I liked how you gradually got to know more and more about them as the book went on. The concept of the different Londons intrigued me. I had to keep reading to find out more about them. I love how each one was so different and so well crafted. Like there was Red London where Kel kind of resides, which is a kind of place where magic is a free love thing, and a lot of people have it. And there's White London, which is creepy, and then there's Black London, which you never find out much about in this book because it's a London that was closed off because magic corrupted it. And just, it's so imaginative, all these different Londons, and it was really well written, I think. And I have a theory of anyone who's read this about Grey London. I think that it's real London in the past because I swear King George III was in it. The plot was really easy to follow without being too basic. The pace was like fast but not too fast. Not once was I bored reading this because the action was so exciting. And Holland and the royalty in White London are absolutely excellent villains. And it was so thrilling to kind of see their dealings and their interactions with Kel and Lila. And it was my favourite book of the month by far, and I give it 5 out of 5 stars. The third book I finished in March, and the book that I'm so pleased that I finally finished, is The Heart Forger by Rin Tripeko. It took me a long time, and I'm going to try and explain what happens in it, but I'm still not that sure. This is the sequel to The Bone Witch, which is about a young lady named Taya, which is written T as in the drink, T-E-A, but I'm sure it's pronounced Taya. And she accidentally brings her brother Fox back to life, leading everyone to realize that she is a bone witch, basically a necromancer. And she has to go to this kind of school for Asha, which is what she is, a kind of magical creature, where they learn things like how to entertain and how to defend themselves and how to use magic. And that was the first book. This is the sequel, where the war that started to brew at the end of The Bone Witch sort of explodes in this one, and Taya finds out that people have lied to her and wants revenge. Like I said, it took me a long time to read this. I don't know if it was my lack of interest because the book wasn't that great, or if I was having some kind of mini reading slump. I don't know, but it took me about 3 weeks to get through this, and it is a kind of like hefty book, but it should not have taken me that long to get through it. I'm not usually that slow a reader. The reason I ended up giving it 3 stars though was because the first book, as okay as it was basically a build up to this one. Now there's a lot more action and plot and story in the Heartforger. The amount of characters that kept popping up from nowhere irritated me. I swear none of them got a proper introduction. There was just suddenly a name. Someone was doing something or saying something, and you were expected to know what they were saying or doing or who the hell they were. And that just threw me off. And the plot, I kind of got a grasp of what was going on, but the thing is that there's alternative plots. It flits very quickly from the present to the past. And while this can keep you excited and keep you going on to learn how events lead to what's happening, it can also be quite disorientating at the same time. So I give this book 3 out of 5 stars. I think it might have been my problem that I didn't get into it, but so I don't want to give it any less, but it was a disappointment. The final book I finished in March was The Lady's Guide to Petticoats and Piracy by Mackenzie Lee. I buddy read this with Kylie A, who I also buddy read The Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue with, which this is the sequel to that. And again, it was lovely buddy reading with Kylie. This book features on Felicity, who was Monty's sister in the first book, as she wants to be a doctor. This is set in the 18th century, where women weren't allowed to study medicine. So she kind of is very desperate to get her name out there and actually start not just reading about medical procedures, but actually performing them. And it transpires that she has a chance to do this if she can get to Germany. And another woman, Sim, who is a pirate, asks her to take her with her to Germany, and she'll pay the expenses as long as Felicity claims that she is her maid. And Sim's reasons for wanting to go there are her own, and you'll find out what they are if you read the book. I actually thought this book was better than the first one. Felicity was my favourite character from the first one, and she's very funny, and this whole book was very funny, and I give points for laughing. First of all, I like that it picks up not straight after the first book, but in a new situation, but you still get to catch up with kind of the old characters and see how their situation has changed. Felicity is also really determined and passionate and driven, and she is relentless in her pursuit for her dream career, which I loved about her. And she's joined along the way by like-minded women, which gives this book a kind of strong feminist vibe to it that I really appreciated and enjoyed reading. And it kind of, you know the way, the kind of girl power vibe that kind of makes you feel kind of like cool to be a woman, basically. Also, it was a fun adventure. It's not to be taken too seriously. There are parts in it that are quite serious, and it again, like A Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue, where it tackles social issues, this also tackles issues in a very mature way, but the underlying plot is one of fun and enjoyment, and I did enjoy it very much, and I give it 4 out of 5 stars. So thank you for watching my video. If you're a nice person, you'll give me a thumbs up down below. If you're really, really nice and you haven't done before, you will please subscribe, because sometimes I keep hitting 210 subscribers and then it goes back down again, and that's frustrating me. So please help me out and subscribe if you can. My Twitter is at AbbieMattReads. I have a Facebook page. It's facebook.com/AbbieMattReads. You can contact me anywhere. I would love to hear in the comments if you have any thoughts about these books, if you've read any of them, if you want to read any of them, and want to ask me any questions. Anything you want to say, put it in the comments, unless it's nasty, and then go away. Okay. That is it for now. Thank you for watching. See you next week. Bye.